All right, I think we're going to get started, guys. You ready, Dan?
Yeah, I'm ready.
We got a big night. We got about an hour. So all you guys out there on Facebook, Trosky Tuesday, we got a really special event tonight. My name's Trent Mongero. We got Dan Gable, and we got Nate Trosky on the line. Really interesting topic, in my opinion. We're going to talk about the role of mentoring tonight. And, but before we get there, let me give you a little background. You baseball people that maybe don't know Dan Gable, you should know him. He's one of the most successful coaches in the history of any sport. And as well as being a coach, he was a tremendous, tremendous athlete himself in the wrestling arena. He's a two-time NCAA Division I national champion wrestler. That within itself is just amazing. He's a world gold medalist, an Olympic gold medalist, and he's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Just to give you a little perspective, the great John Wooden said that Dan was the best coach that he had ever seen. So high praise from John Wooden, who many consider the best. That's an unbelievable tribute. Of course, Nate Trosky, a lot of you guys know, Brewers scout, coach of the area code games, national instructor, speaker, top camp clinician. I'm Trent Mongero, your host. Author, speaker, 28-year high school
coach of the year, national coach of the year, 2 years
national.
ago.
Thank you, Nate. Yeah, I appreciate that. So let's start to get into the meat of this, because I'm really interested to hear you guys talk on this topic. The perspective that we have is this. So the three of us each have a little bit different perspective. And when we're talking tonight, Dan has 12 grandkids. His 13th is on the way. So he is taking what he has learned in his life as an athlete and a coach, and he is now mentoring his grandkids as well as many other people, around this world. Nate Trosky, of course, has his nephews, Gable and Rowan, who are both Division I athletes that he is mentoring and has been mentoring. And I have my son Tabor, so I have the father perspective. So we each, kind of are coming from a little bit different angle tonight. But I really want to start this off with Dan Gable. Let's just start. Why are mentors so important in the lives of athletes? Dan.
You opened the door there, so I will take it. I really didn't know that. I really wouldn't know from the beginning that mentors are important. It's probably down the line where you all of a sudden start deciphering things and starting to realize why you're doing things maybe better than other people, or maybe you're just not getting in as trouble as much. Maybe you're getting better grades. Maybe you're being a better sports person. There's just so many reasons. And you don't really know at that time until you get older, until you become, maybe go to college, or you might realize in high school a little bit. You might even realize, once you become, when you really realize it is when you become in your profession and what you're going to do. So once I became a coach, I really realized a lot more what took place in my life and what should be taking place in a lot of people's lives. And as far as recruiting, I could tell exactly, or not exactly, but really a lot of things from just the mentors, whether it be their mom, their dad, their brothers, their sisters, or their coaches, or their teachers, or friends, uncles, people in their lives. And it just so happens that when I analyze my life, and I still do all the time, it's like there's certain things that are a little different than most people and a little better, I would say. It's like I'm born into a community of a good sports community at the time. And the reason why they were a good sports community was a community of about 80,000 Waterloo, Iowa. But they had 3 high schools in the local area, but they had some really good coaches and some really good administrators. And because of that, that gave that community a little bit of an edge. It just so happens they were doing really good in wrestling. I mean, almost every kid wanted to wrestle, but they were also doing really good in football and pretty dang good in basketball. Not bad in baseball, but they were not winning state titles like they were winning in basketball, in football, and a lot in wrestling. So almost every person would be a parent would be, if they're attached to these 3 schools, Waterloo East, Waterloo West, Cedar Falls High School, which is right next to the community of Waterloo. They had 3 great coaches in wrestling. My dad was a wrestler, not a great wrestler, but his friends were great wrestlers. And then they already had kids that were older than me that were kind of mentoring me a little bit, but it was right there. I was born into a community that you could excel in athletics pretty much as a guy, not so much in those years yet as a female. But so, and again, this is a tough town. And there's a lot of there's a lot of meat packing companies going on, and that stuff right now is even tough in where we're at. But so right away at the age of 4, I'd already been in wrestling rooms just because I went to wrestling matches, things like that. But I, with my parents and things like that. But by the age of 4, my parents were smart enough to realize that he's got to get some outside influence to help. We need help. We need help. I had a sister that was 4 years older than me, but at the time, when I was 4 and a half, they enrolled me into the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association. We also had a Young Women's Christian Association too, but it was 2 separate ones. And of course, the first thing you do is you learn how to swim. I mean, that's a life skill. I mean, how many people drown because you don't know how to swim, or how many people want to go fishing, or they just even all of a sudden go off a road in a car, and you need some skills. And so the YMCA was really good for me when I was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I was there almost every day. There was this kid with a gym bag, and in that gym bag, when they got dropped off and I walked in that YMCA, I was now getting around other kids. So I was learning to communicate with kids my own age, a little bit older, but there was people there that looked out after you. But they looked out after you because they taught you skills and mostly in sports. And so I learned swimming there for sure, but they had a wrestling room. I was already a little bit of a wrestler. They had boxing at that time. It's probably not quite as much now. I played basketball. We did a lot of different things. But the YMCA and I look at who I entered with. The people that entered the YMCA at my age, I look right now, and I look at guys, and we were on a swim team starting about 7 or 8, and I went to about 12 years old. I actually excelled in swimming. That was the first sport I excelled in. Even though I was wrestling, I wasn't competitive wrestling. So I learned how to swim, so you wouldn't drown. And then secondly, we got competition, and I actually won a state YMCA backstroke state title. I took 4th in the individual medley. But I look at the guys that were on my swim team, and they came in and they're the same grade or 1 year younger, 1 year older, but every one of them that I can think of right now, like Rick Young, Tom Penaluna, these guys that John Peterson, not the John that I wrestled with in the Olympics, a different one. But you know what? We all went on and were very successful in our professions and in our families. And it's amazing that, I just started thinking about this ever since I was going to do this. Is this a podcast? I'm not sure, but
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about the people that were actually around me at that young age, and even though we didn't stay friends from like hung out against each other, they each went their own way, same schools. They some of them swam, some of them played football, others did different things. But I looked at the guys, and they're all had done very well in their life. So they had really good mentorship at that young age. Besides at home, they had an outside influence, that YMCA. It also taught me to be social. I had my first job when I was 10 years old at the YMCA. And you know what it was? It was handing out towels, handing out keys, cleaning, sweeping the locker room, emptying the trash, cleaning out lockers. And you know what? It was 35 cents an hour. So, that's back in 56, 57, 58, something like that. 35 cents an hour. So, I only worked there 6, 7, 8, 9 hours a week. And along with doing the swimming, along with doing the competing, along with doing the other sports. But I'd get a paycheck for about $2.65. Maybe once in a while to get one like $3.30. But my dad, besides being my dad, he looked at my older sister, and he looked at me, and he says, I'm going to start you guys. And I didn't know about it, but I remember him talking to me about it, but I just forgot about it. He just goes, I'm going to start you guys a retirement plan when you're 10 years old. Well, because I was working and I was getting a check. Every 1 week, every 2 weeks, I get a check. And a little bit of that would go, I'm sure the max he put in, because he always told me to put the max in to retirements and all the benefits every time you work. So I started working at an early age. And so, here's the thing. I was 10 years old when I had the first job making 35 cents an hour at the YMCA, and I learned social skills, that type of stuff, and a work ethic. Besides the coaches that were there, I can even remember the coaches' names that were teaching me swimming. Wally Lessman, Chuck Azama. These guys, they got to be meaningful to me because I'm up there in age, and this was back when I was a kid, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. But here's the thing. All of a sudden, you fast forward 20 years when my dad started me a retirement plan. And, what was amazing is I got married when I was about 25, and a few years into marriage, all of a sudden, my wife I let her handle the finances mostly. And she said, we need some more money, And so I just kind of remembered what my dad did for me. I just know he said, hey, I'm starting you something early. You're going to have that forever. And, and I never even thought about it. And here I was 27 years old. And I called my dad and I just said, hey, Dad, didn't you do something for me when I was a kid at the YMCA back 20 years ago that you started me some kind of a retirement plan? He goes, yeah, I did. I said, is there any money in that retirement plan? I mean, it's 20 years. He goes, well, let me call you back. So he called me back and he goes, son, yeah, there's some money in it. And I said, would you mind telling me how much money? Now, I've been married, for 2.5 years, 3 years, and 4 years actually. And then he goes, again, this is, so this would be about 1978, 1977. So I've been in there about 21 years. He said, yeah, there's $250,000. And I said,
little pocket change.
I go, what? I mean, you guys are, I'm not as old as this guy, but $250,000 in the late 50s was a good chunk of money. And I just went to my wife and I said, honey, don't worry about money. I mean, I'm not even going to take that money. We'll work it out. We'll figure it out. But that's somebody that's looking out for you. That's right. Somebody that's a mentor. I mean, besides the YMCA, you got it right at home. And I have to admit, that's pretty unique. It's pretty unique. And so then my dad was kind of a laid back role. I don't think he missed a football practice or a baseball practice. I don't think he missed a swimming practice. I don't think he missed a wrestling practice. he was always there. Didn't say a lot, but just looking out. Now, when I got out of line, I had another mentor. That was my mom. And my dad actually, if I was not towing the line well, he would, lay the law down. And back in those days, I don't know who's on here listening, but back in those days, you could get hit. You could get hit in those days. I mean, people find it surprising, I mean, when I went to school, the teachers had rulers. The teachers had straps. The teachers had, they smacked you. They could do that. And now you can't, of course. A lot of things are different. So there's a lot of different rules. But my mom was the corporal. I went through a lot of rulers at home, I can tell you that, with my mom. Now, did they really hurt? I don't know. She broke a lot of rulers over me. But again, it was only if I was out of line and those types of things. And I was out of line. I wasn't a perfect kid. And they weren't a perfect parents either. I mean, they like to drink a lot of beer and raise a lot of hell. But they did, they looked out after their kids pretty good. They looked out after their kids. So the YMCA was the great place. I had a good place for home, wasn't perfect. And I had a sister that was 4 years older than me. And, girls didn't really compete in athletics at that particular time. She had a lot of boyfriends, and there was a lot of wrestlers that were actually at our house at that time, actually would come over and visit with her and stuff like that. And so, I was, and we had great teams. But here's the thing. I started off really good with that way, but I didn't start off good academically. For some reason, I was a pro football, pro baseball. I love Mantle. I love Jimmy Brown. These guys I looked up to because TV just came out when I was 4 years old. That was the first TV we ever had. I may have been out before that, but it's the first one we ever had. So I got to see some of these guys. I think in basketball was Bob Cousy. I mean, he could dribble a ball through his legs, around his legs, on top of his head. He could do anything. Mantle could outrun a bunt, actually a good hit to the first base. He could outrun it, and then he could bat the other way, right-handed. So I'm watching these people that are fascinating. Jimmy Brown, and I'm wanting to be like them. So I was really into the sports, but not so much into the academics. So I wasn't really set on, wrestling was my sport, but I also played baseball, played football, and swam until 7th grade. And so, I did all these sports, but 8th grade, walked into a class, and it was Algebra 1, I believe, Algebra 1. And I looked at it, it was my wrestling coach from 7th grade. And he was the 8th grade, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade wrestling coach. And so we were all together. And I really didn't know that he taught algebra. I had him as a wrestling coach as a 7th grader, but as an 8th grader, I really didn't know it until I went into his classroom. And wow. And here's the thing with me. I was a character, but I really didn't enjoy the teachers in the school. And I'd get in trouble quite a bit in class, and my grades were not very good. I can tell you right now, I had very few. I don't know if I ever had a B up until 8th grade. I walked in that classroom, and there was a guy, a guy was the wrestling coach, Martin Lundvall. And all of a sudden, I kind of beamed a little bit. I didn't smile a lot, but I kind of beamed. And I said, "What are you doing in here? You're the wrestling coach." You go, "No, I'm the algebra teacher." And so I said, great. So I finally gave a teacher a chance to show what a teacher can be. It was really me. I might have had a lot of good teachers before that, and I'm sure I did. But I just didn't want anything to do with them because, they were teaching me stuff I didn't want to learn. And so I didn't really want to learn Algebra 1 either, but Martin Lundvall was the wrestling coach. And so I actually tried in that classroom. I actually listened because I knew after the day was done, I was going to go to wrestling practice, especially during the winter, with him. And I really liked the guy. So all of a sudden we take a test, and it was a little bit different than normal because I thought I knew some of the answers. And then the test comes back, and it wasn't a perfect score, but it was like a B-. And I'm used to D's, I'm used to C's, I'm used to these things. And it was the first time ever in a classroom that I felt something. I felt I felt what it meant to be a student of academics. I always say this, it was kind of like all of a sudden when he put that test score down there in front of me and we went over it, it was almost like my right hand started going up like this. You know what that means? That's what happens in a wrestling match when you get your hand and you win the match and the referee raises your hand. You're the winner. And it was like, wow, that test felt like kind of a half of a win in wrestling. Well, it wasn't an A. It wasn't an A. Well, I didn't have A pluses those days. So it's pretty amazing to me that started my academic career. And from there on, because once ninth grade hits, that's when it counts academics to go to college. I would have been on the road to go, nothing wrong with community colleges, but I would have been in a community college instead of going to Iowa State University. I ended up with over a 3-point out of a 4-point average out of ninth grade through 12th grade. And I had the grades that could get you in besides the sports skills. But, I would have never had that. And so that would have changed my whole life. So look at this guy. This guy, besides being a wrestling coach, really his math, because he was the math teacher, I looked at him in a different way. I accepted him more. I actually worked out more. And so there's a lot of people out there. You got to give a lot of people chances. They're more than just somebody that you don't respect. You don't have to, respect them just because they're the wrestling coach. I should have respected him because he was a teacher. But sometimes teachers don't realize that, and they have to work extremely hard. So let me tell you about it. One thing about a teacher. It used to be you had to give so many A's out, so many B's, so many C's, so many D's, and so many F's. I just cannot believe you used to have to do that. Because I, as a teacher, I, as a coach, I, as a leader, do you really want to have somebody flunk your course? And I'm glad that most classes aren't like that. I'm sure there are some somewhere, but most of the time you get what you earn. And if you're a good enough teacher to get everybody to pass, and if you're a good enough coach to get everybody to do well, and you don't have to kick them off the team for any reasons, or you don't have to give them failing grades and failing marks, because let me tell you why. It's a reflection of you as a teacher or as a coach or as a mom or as a dad. If your kids aren't doing well, then that mentorship needs to be looked at a little closer, needs to be figured out a little bit more. And I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it don't turn your head and don't give up, because that is what happens in a lot of families when they just turn away. And if you guys want to ask me anything, I'll be glad to. I'm just starting because it's because mentors. Let me if you have something you really want to stop him, but let me tell you something. My dad, he was a well-known realtor. He'd made some mistakes in his life. He made a bunch of early money before he got into real estate, and he went and took all of his investments. He sold his company. He went and bought a farm, tried to be a farmer, never was a farmer before in his life. Iowa was a big farming community, but he lost everything in a year, lost everything. So when he came back, we got into real estate. And I'll tell you what, when I run into people in my hometown, if they know I'm Dan Gable, they'll say, hey, your dad was my realtor. And he says, in fact, he sold me one house. Then he sold me my second house. Then he sold me my third house. And I go, wow. I go, why did you stick with my dad? And he said, he was looking out for us, and he was loyal. It wasn't one of these one-time sells, take what you can get and run. And then, but he was always looking out for us. So that taught me something when I understood why he did okay. He wasn't, he didn't do unbelievably, but he did really well once he learned, made a mistake and got into something he liked, became real loyal, learned his business. So anyway, I'm 16 years old, and I'm getting ready to get hired by a construction company in the summer, because my dad said to me after my sophomore year, he goes, you're a little you need some muscles. You need some muscles because you're a wrestler. You won the state championship, but you're going to, once you get through, every year it's going to be stronger. Every year it's going to be tougher. You're going to end up, you've got some big goals. We got to get you a job that's going to work you extremely hard. So I want you to get you a job that's, you're carrying concrete around, making concrete, carrying bags of cement, digging, that type of stuff. And he says, I think I can get you a job somewhere. You need to go interview with this guy. And so I went and interviewed with this guy, and it just so happens my dad worked with the guy, and I didn't know it at the time. And the guy hired me, and I went to work. And so little did I know that I was illegal, because you had to be 18. It was a union type of job, and you had to be 18, but somehow they just let me slide through there. And I was working with all these old timers, and they were great people to work with. And I was a young guy, and they probably couldn't believe I was, but I was out working them. And I was there for a purpose. I wasn't there to get, now I was up to making $2.25 an hour, but or $1.75 maybe. But anyway, but I was working my butt off every day, and every hard job, they made sure I had it. And I'd unload the 94-pound bags of concrete. But I didn't carry one of them. I'd carry two or three, because I'm thinking about my wrestling. But now that I'm a sophomore, after my sophomore year, that was actually after my junior year, and my dad's. But little did I know that my dad got me the job just because he knew the guy behind the scenes, and he actually told the guy. He goes, Jerry, I'll pay my son's wages if you hire him. I didn't know that till years later. When I'm with Jerry and my dad years later, after I win the Olympics, and we're celebrating a little bit, and then they tell me this story. I mean, that's a guy that's looking out for you. I mean, I had that retirement plan. That's a guy that's looking out for you. Okay, all of a sudden I got a job, and I came back, and I was a lot much stronger after that summer. And so, he got, he knew what I wanted when I did, and he had some connections, but more than that, he was looking out for me. And then the other people were looking out for me. So, that's pretty amazing. So here's a guy that is getting ready to go to the Olympics, and I'm doing a wrestling camp. This would be in 1972. And I left, and they paid me good money. They paid me $500 to do this wrestling camp. Of course, I worked my butt off for probably all weekend. Probably worked 10 hours, but that $500 is a lot of money back in 72 too, even. And so all of a sudden, somebody finds out I got paid this $500. Probably one of my people that wanted to beat me out, but they turned me in, because I didn't know this. I could not work and make money at that time, an amateur, off your own sport. So I went and did a clinic for kids. And so, but I still didn't know that at that time, because the organization that's in charge of wrestling called my dad, and he said, Mr. Gable, we have a complaint here. Somebody filed a grievance that your son might have gotten some money for the sport of wrestling, and we're going to have to look into this. And he goes, well, what do you mean? He can't get money? So he goes, no. So what's he have to do? He says, well, he has to pay it back. Well, I didn't know that. And in fact, until about 2 years after the Olympics, when I come back, I never knew anything about this story. But Dad sat me down one day, or maybe I had a couple beers too many, and he goes, son, I helped you get into those Olympics. I said, I know you did, Dad. I know you did. I goes, no, let me tell you the story. And then he told me the story, and he just wrote a check, $500, paid it to the people that put the clinic on, and I was good. But he told me, he goes, you know what? It cost me $500 for you to go win the Olympics, plus all the travel and all this kind of stuff. But it was well worth it, he said. It was well worth it. But you know, here's the thing. You know, it's just, you learn these things that people can do for you, but they wouldn't do them if they didn't care for you or if they weren't looking out for you. You know, so, you know, that's unbelievable that I had an 8th grade wrestling coach teach me how to be an academic student, that I had a dad that got me a job. I had a dad that got me a retirement plan. And all of a sudden when I needed money, you know, it was there, you know, and then I had my mom that kept me in line, you know, and even though they would, you know, the home life wasn't perfect. In fact, you know, as I'm talking about how good my home life is, I mean, we had a tragedy, and it was my sister. And me and my mom and dad and a friend of mine, we went up to this cabin about 2.5 hours away on the Mississippi River in Northeast Iowa. And my sister was kind of running my dad's real estate office at 19 years old. And she was going to meet us the next morning, but she didn't show up. And when she didn't show up, we had to go to a paid telephone, and we called the neighbor, and the neighbor said her car was still there. So all of a sudden, you know, things start getting a little scary. And all of a sudden we told him to break into the house, but he went around back and the door was already broken in. And the night before, a person broke into our house and murdered my 19 years old. Here's the thing. My mom and dad were good because, you know, yeah, there was fighting in the family, and there was drinking beer and family, but my sister fought for her life. The guy actually went in for one thing in mind, and was a neighbor kid, and was younger than her, but she fought for her life, you know, and she didn't give in, and she gave her life up. But the amazing story was, a month before that, I was walking to school, and he was a neighbor about 2 blocks away, and I never had walked to school with him. He was kind of a different cat. And it just so happens, I was right after my state tournament, my first year, and I won it. And he said something to me. We happened to bump into each other, kind of, and he goes, "Hey, good job this year." And I said, "Thanks." And he said something about my sister, and it was like, wow, I can't believe he just said that. I didn't say much to him, but I kind of, when I got to school, it bothered me, and I turned around and went back home to tell her, and I didn't tell her what he said. And like I said, 3 weeks later, he murdered her. And you know, and stop. But a family, these family that took care of me was going to fall apart. It just wasn't going to be good. It just was not. And all of a sudden, because of the YMCA, because of my 8th grade math teacher, because of my high school wrestling coach, because it was my end of my sophomore year, Bob Siddons, unbelievable mentor, the guidance counselor. Can you believe how lucky that is? The high school coach was not just the wrestling coach and the best coach in the state, but he was also the guidance counselor. So I had this guidance. And so I actually was able to help my mom and dad kind of keep it together. And what I didn't really realize, that they really did like each other. And I didn't know that until I went and left and went to college. But then again, you go to college, and besides having the greatest high school wrestling coach and a counselor, I got a college wrestling coach. That is the national championship coach from 1965. He was a former Michigan star in wrestling, former guy from Cresco, Iowa. I mean, that's the greatest little wrestling town in America. At one time, they had 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 national championships, and they're a little rural town. And they had a guy named Norman Borlaug, who was he wrestled and went to the University of Minnesota and became Nobel Peace Prize winner. And he's got a statue in Washington, D.C. You know, it's unbelievable, you know, what this sport or what baseball can do. Because, you know, baseball was my first love with swimming and baseball with Mickey Mantle. But you know what? But I stuck in the sport that was best for me because that's what I liked the most, and that's where my body type was. So,
Dan.
Yes.
So my takeaways from everything you said, and it's absolutely tragic what happened to your sister. That's horrible. But what I picked up from you listening and talking about mentorship is you were very blessed to have some tremendous mentors in your life, starting, going all the way back to your family, the YMCA, your coaches, your teachers that poured into you to help you become the successful person that you became, a tremendous success story. I'd be really curious to turn this to Nate real quick and see, what his take, because I know as a coach now, finding good mentors is harder and harder. So many lives don't have the father and the mother and, that are pouring into the lives of their kids. And, of course, teachers are pouring. But Nate, what, in your opinion, defines a great mentor, or add anything on to what Dan was saying, because we're really focused here on the value of mentorship.
First of all, thank you, Dan, for all your message and your story. I know you're just getting started. We appreciate it. Taking a lot of great notes. I think the great challenge I think that we have, especially in our culture today, is that you can't instill into somebody something you don't instill in yourself. And there's not a lot of leaders in the world we live in. There's a lot of broken homes. There's not a lot of homes that have mothers and fathers that have this support and stability. I mean, typically, if you got a mom and a dad, they're both usually working. And, I remember I started my baseball coaching career doing lessons, and I was doing lessons for years and years. And I'm in a very affluential community, Carmel, Pebble Beach. It's one of the wealthiest places in the world. And, you got fathers and mothers. And I ended up being the mentor because the dad's a doctor and he gets home at 8 o'clock every night. And the time that he spends with his kid is minuscule. And the biggest key, like Dan said, he says, my father was a great realtor, not because he was the best realtor. He was the best realtor because he was loyal. And that means he had a genuine respect and love for his clients. He loved the individual. He pursued the individual. The individual had importance to him, and the client felt that. And that's something that's missing. And when Dan was talking about his early teachers, there wasn't a connection. Well, the connection came because he had something common with the coach. The teacher, the math teacher, was a wrestling coach. So there automatically was a bond. So what we need to do from the mentor, from the side of understanding how important our role is not necessarily to have something in common with the skateboarder or the kid who plays in the band. We all have one thing in common. We all want to be loved and appreciated. Every single human being. And that's the number one need for every human, is to be respected, to be loved and cared for unconditionally. And if we can't break those walls down of our judgment of looking at an individual and saying, oh, he's different, I don't understand him, why is he like that, why does he have hair like that, why does he dress like that, we have all these problems, we have all these insecurities in our own ways, these pillars, these roadblocks. If we can break them down and accept the human and say, I love you, even though you do something I don't necessarily appreciate, I love you. And you know what happens? You automatically have a connection. So the words that you say now have tremendous value. No matter if I'm a science teacher and I'm talking to a boy who's a baseball player, and the kid has no interest in science, but he knows that I genuinely care about him. And it goes into talking about things about how you doing? What is your hobby? What do you love to do? I remember one of the best pitching coaches in the country, he was talking about the first thing that he does in the bullpen time. He doesn't even pay attention to the curveball, the breaking ball, the velocity. He pays attention to nothing about the result and the tool and the athlete. He pays attention to, the first thing he says is, hey, what are your hobbies? What do you like, son? And the kid says, hey, I like motocross. The other guy says, I like to garden, man. I got a big garden at my house. That's me and my mom and dad. We go out on the weekend. Whatever the kid likes to do, the coach goes home and he reads about it. He reads about it for the next week. So when he comes back, he has something to talk to the player about. It's not about, hey, your curveball is great, because if you don't develop the trust and respect early on, what happens is the kid doesn't even listen to anything you even say. It's about the love. So we need to pursue the individual, understand the individual. Hey, you like mountain climbing? I'm going to go read an article on mountain climbing. So when I come back tomorrow, when I see that player on the field, I'm going to say, hey, buddy, yeah, I just read this thing about mountain climbing, and you have something to connect. It's that connecting. It's connecting beyond the surface. And that needs to be number one priority, because when you're young, like Dan said, you don't get it. You don't get it. You don't say, yeah, that guy really cares for me. You don't get it. You don't get that you should probably be listening, even though you don't even have a connection with the guy. When you get older, you get it. So we need to be better as mentors, saying, I'm going to connect with that player by pursuing him and getting to know him. So, those are some key principles, but also instilling in us values for ourselves, because if we live with values, it's very easy to instill. If I have self-discipline in my own life, it's very easy to teach self-discipline to someone in my classroom. But if I'm lacking self-discipline, self-control, self-motivation, the components of self-mastery, how am I going to instill it with confidence? I won't even probably talk about it because I don't think about it, because that's not who I am. So we need to work on our own. We need to personally work on ourselves, our own character, becoming better individually and growing as coaches and parents, growing daily, challenging yourself, parents, coaches, teachers, get better every day. And you know what happens when you're getting better? You're going to drip, like you say, Trent, you're going to drip on everybody around you, because you're filling up. You're being filled up daily, and you have something to contribute.
Great stuff. And for both you guys, the next question, I think, all right, so our audience is probably made up of a lot of parents, coaches, and we treat our players like sons, or if you're, a woman coaching, or a guy coaching softball, daughters, they're our family. These kids become our families when we love them. But I would be very curious to know, like Dan, of all, this is going to be very hard to do probably because of your vast experience, but what are two of the big things that you focus on when you're mentoring your grandchildren, that you took from other people, that you really try to instill in your grandchildren as you're developing them, say, as athletes? I don't know. We'll just use the athletic things. Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
Yeah.
Dan?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure it does, yeah. One of the reasons why I had so many good teams was because I had a mix. It took a while to figure that out. I mean, even though we were winning a lot, I just really kind of figure out exactly what is needed. There needs to be that attitude. You need to have an attitude, and a good attitude, and one that you have to develop, and then you also have to look at the genetics. And so you have an attitude and you have genetics, and to really figure out what a person needs, you have to work with them a little while to be able to see that, are they more just a good fighter, a good tough competitor, or does he need a lot more skill work? That's kind of how you build a really good team. You have some kind of a mix. I mean, it's just almost impossible to get everybody that's perfectly has great work ethics and perfectly genetically. And so they give and take for each other. I mean, some of my most talented kids, because he was in a room that had some examples of really great, unbelievable work ethic, that talented kid will pick that up. And then the kid that was, just unbelievably he could work. He would look and see all these skills that this guy was doing or the coaches was showing, and he would pick that up. And so there's a combination there. And I think the best combination is when you have everybody contributing to everybody else on the team. So I'd say with the grandkids right now, I mean, they're from almost born. There's still one in the belly, and another 12, and they're up to 16 years old, and going to be 9 boys and 4 girls. And I'd say that they're all interested pretty much into athletics, almost all of them. And I think that's the key is to hook them from a standpoint that they really know that you're looking out for them. Number one. Number two, it takes a while. And then actually get them to do the work. But then also, as they're doing the work, you can learn that, oh, this guy here, he needs this a little more. Focus on the attitude. This guy here needs a little bit more skill work. And I think once you get going, you actually combine them, but more than combine them, you actually favor what they need. And if you can get it to where they are having, and I don't know about the word fun, because when I'm putting these kids through these workouts, I hate to admit it, but they don't usually have smiles on their face.
But they do when they win. They do when they win.
You're right, but I'm getting them to work, which is painful. There's pain involved in work.
Discipline.
And because of that, am I still on here?
Yep. Yeah, you're
because
good.
Of that, I'm not having so much fun between the two of us, but because they have respect and because I didn't do it the first day to them, I always say you get them and you have 30 workouts with them, 30 days with them, where you're pretty much in charge. Then if you've done a good job in those 30 days, you can start doing pretty much whatever you really feel is necessary. And you're not going to have a lot of backlash. They'll do it. They might not like it, but they'll do it. And
you've gained their trust and their love by that point.
Exactly. And so it's not like the first day you're going to break them. That's what happens with some of our coaches in our sport anyway, because we're tough guys, we combat, it's more than just we get in there and fight, and so what happens is one of the worst things a coach can do in our sport is all of a sudden get a new kid that wants to come out for wrestling, and he's got 30 kids that have been out for a while, and all of a sudden this kid's never wrestled before or very little wrestling, and throw him right in the thick of the battle. He lasts maybe 1 day or 2 days, or maybe he'll last a week because, he's a long ways behind. And if you want to put people into your sport, you got to hook them. It takes a while. And so I get mad at some of these coaches because here's what I say. I go, how many kids you start with? We started with 32. How many did you end up with? Oh, we started with 20. We ended with 22. I said, wait a minute. My coach in high school, Bob Siddons, started with 45, and by the end of the season, he'd have 60 out. And because he would not only hook the guys, he would hook the parents too.
Right.
And they were getting some out of it. Even though everybody wasn't performing on the mat in front of the public, they were getting something out of that practice. And they go home and probably do more homework because of it or whatever. They were maybe they were just that much tired and they didn't want to go out and raise hell or whatever they normally did with why the mom and dad wanted to be involved. But it was mostly they wanted to be involved because they think it was going to help their kid. And we had a successful program. I mean, as bad as I'd hate to say this, if you're really working, and you don't have much to show for it, you probably better make some changes.
Well, and that's not a hook, right? You're not hooking them real good.
That's not a hook. But anyway, go ahead.
No, I think, there again, that point that you made, the hook. So, you're now a former athlete, former coach, still coach, and then coaching your grandkids, and you're trying to find the hook for them. You're trying to light their fire, show the love, learn them individually. And then once they know that you have that, then you can start to really press their buttons a little bit more and push them, and they're not going to break because you know them. You're not trying to break them. And so those are some really good points. And I think, Nate, as we go to your perspective now working with your nephews, so Dan's with his grandkids. Of course, he does coaches other people besides his grandkids, but we're talking about his grandkids. You're with your nephews, I'm with your son. So for the people that are on board here that are listening, this is critical stuff because we can do what Dan said and we don't want to do. We can break the kids. Even in baseball, we can break them. So you work with your nephews 4 hours a day on average. How do you keep from breaking them? How do you become the mentor that's going to grow these your nephews into great baseball players and great men? How do you do it?
You know,
well, first of all, you go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Nate.
I was going to say, I don't do 4 hours a day. So that's good. That's your livelihood now. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, but this is volunteer time. This isn't my job. I'm giving them 4 hours every day. So this is what I do in the afternoon from about 4 to 8 to 9 o'clock, pretty much every day. I'm supposed to be there right now, actually, but they have a routine that they do. So they have about an hour and a half to 2 hour routine that they do without me, which we train since they were 10. So I said, if you want to be an elite player, and it's not about me being an elite player, and it's not about me wanting them to be an elite player. It's giving them a vision, giving them an opportunity to have a vision. And once someone owns a vision, it's over. It's game over. But the vision has to be within their head, what they want. And a vision can happen when you're 4, it can happen when you're 6, it can happen when you're 35. It doesn't matter. You have to have a vision if you want to do great things. Because human beings are typically motivated by how they feel. If I don't feel like doing something, I don't do it. Well, about a third of the time, you think of a major league season, it's 162 games in 180 days. A third of the time in those games, they don't feel like even going to the park because it hurts. They're tired, they're cranky, they just don't feel good. So that's about 50 out of 162 games. That's the typical major leaguer. That's being human. So if you think about these guys are going to the park every day. They don't miss. I told them the other day, I said, you guys haven't missed for like 4 years. They've never missed except if they were like ill. So when I go up there, their cars will be in the parking lot. It's just two guys, and they're there for 2 hours before me, and they have their routine, but they own the routine because I've taught them the why, and we've given them an opportunity to create their own vision by giving them an opportunity to taste it and see it. So first and foremost, it can't be your vision. And the vision's captured, like Dan was saying, he's 4 years old going to the wrestling room. You create a vision by what you see it, and you start saying, interesting. And then you put people in their lives that you want them to be like. So if I bring someone around, it could be like 3 days ago, we had a former guy with the Seattle Mariners from our town. He's in town. He lives in New York. He got released. I said, Nick, come down to the field. Come talk to us. He came down and he talked to Gable and Roland for about an hour. Okay. I'm putting people in their circles so that they say, that's who I want to be like, not just Uncle Nate, because I'm getting tired to them. They see me every day. So I'm continually finding ways to keep the vision alive. And Nick's talking about, I said, Nick, what's one of the keys? He said, let me just tell you something, guys, because we talk mental game every day. That's a part of our development stuff, but we keep it fun. It's not all scheduled. We might just start hitting, and then 30 minutes in, I see something, and then we just start talking about a story about Manny Ramirez. Everything's timing. You can't force anything, but you put it in your head as a coach on what's important you want to accomplish today, and you let it naturally, flow. You can't go and say, okay, guys, sit down right now. Bullet point number 1, I'm prepared today, guys. You start going through this checklist. They're like, come on, man, this ain't class. So the first thing that I do is I'm real. I just show up and say, how you guys doing? We just talk for like 10 to 15. One reason why we're there for 4 hours is because we talk for about 15 minutes, just about how's your day going? And then they tell me a story, and I tell them something I learned today, or I'm on a podcast with Gable and Trent Mongero. And they're like, oh, really? What do you got on? I said, Dan Russell's on Pavement. Okay. And so I tell them, and they start laughing and they have a good time. So it's about enjoying your experience of growing and learning. And then we talk about, then go back to the vision. If they don't have a vision in their mind and what it takes to get what they want, you're going to burn them out so fast, because it's not them understanding there is a process and there's requirements to the process. And if you don't own it, and it's not me, you have to own it. So once they own it and they realize, then they align. So you teach them the process of how do you become a champion. And there is no age limit. First is have a vision. Introduce it. So when they were like 10, we're going to the Stanford game. We're introducing them to guys. So they started creating a vision, guys they want to be like. And once they have that plan in their head, game over. And then I started to teach them how to work by themselves. So they have a routine. They learn how to work, because if you can't work on your own, like for an extended amount of time, you don't have a shot, because your coach isn't always going to be there. And great players are made before and after practice, when practice isn't even going on. That's when the greats are made. So you have to learn how to train. So we built that concept into them and they get it. They understand it's about the process. How great is your process? Because great players have a great process. I'm just not telling them that. They learn to understand it because I teach them the why. And once they understand the why, they have a vision. And then when I go and spend time with them, we have a good time. But when we start hitting the balls, we have intent. There's intent. There's a level of intent for separation amongst the elite. And we continually talk about what moment and what date are you preparing for? It's the date and the moment. You're always in preparation for a specific date and a specific moment. So if you're in a season, the next date is the Friday night game. Who are you going to play? Where are you playing? What do you want from your results? From the moment, what do you want? So we talk about that. And so they are always thinking, they're always inspired by what they're working for, because you forget. You get motivated not by your purpose and mission. You get motivated by how you feel. And that's a problem. We talked earlier, a third of the time, you don't even feel like going to practice. So there's a lot involved. I'll tell you the biggest changer that I've seen is we created a calendar, and you put the calendar up and you say, okay, to be an elite player, there's body, tools, and makeup. So what they do is we start setting goals in all categories: your body, your physical tools, and your makeup. Your makeup is your mental makeup and your character. So now when you start having mental makeup and character goals, who do you want to be? Who do you want to become? Those are powerful. So what happens is when they start identifying, I want to be a guy who's on time. I want to be a guy who gives his best. When he starts identifying who he wants to become, you know what happens? Now you can hold him accountable to what he wants. So now he creates goal sets in body, tools, makeup, and then we create a calendar. When are you going to work on the run tool, the hit tool, the field tool, the throw tool, the hit for power? That's 5 tools. I don't know one kid in America that's training 5 tools weekly. I don't know one except my 2 nephews. And the reason is because I understand. I'm a scout with Major League Baseball, and I've been in the Dominican Republic for 15 years watching the Dominicans train 5 tools. And I'm going, no one in America has a plan. So what happens is you put your tools on your calendar, and they go, I'm going to do run tool Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm going to do throw tool Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm going 6 days throw tool. I'm going to do my hit tool, 5 tools. And they put it in their calendar. And it's just like an appointment you have with a doctor. You don't miss appointments with the doctor. You know why? Because it doesn't feel good, right? When you have an appointment on your calendar and you know what you want, and you know that's your alignment, that's your navigation to get what you want. See, they get it. It's not me constantly having to tell them. So the calendar has literally transformed who they are, because each day they see and they know what to prepare for mentally. And these guys are in high school. They're young. They're freshmen, sophomores. Now they're juniors and seniors. And they have that vision daily, what it takes. They know what they want. And you know what? It's not that difficult, but it took a lot of time. Like Dan was saying, it takes time, like the 30-day trial. You just don't jump in and say, let's be big leaguers today. And it's not about being big leaguers. It's about shaping them to accomplish something that might be important to them, but they don't know what's important to them. You need to understand. Your kids have no idea. They're bouncing around like a ball off a wall. You have to help shape their focus on what is important, because they have no concept. You don't know what's important to you when you're young because you've never done it. So they just start coming up with all these ideas. So that's kind of a picture, a small picture of what we do.
Yeah. So Dan and Nate both talked about a hook. And, you know, as a parent or a mentor, it's important that you help paint this vision for the people that you're working with. Nate talked about exposing his nephews to different players, different venues. You take your young son, if you're hoping he's going to get into wrestling or whatever sport, you take him to an event. You expose them to different people and excitement. You show them the Olympics when they're on TV. You just expose them, and they start to create over time. That's the big thing. This takes time. They create a vision for themselves. And both Dan and Nate said, when the vision is created, now you can start pushing buttons. You can, and then Nate talked about the schedule, the plan, and I do the same thing. So my son, Tabor, he's a Division I baseball player. I coached him in high school. There was a lot of challenges to all of that, and I don't have time to get into them all. But I will tell you that I was very strategic in allowing him to create his own vision. I didn't force it, okay? You can't force it. You can't pound them and, constantly be on them and nagging them and they got to start to take some ownership, and that generally takes time. And every player's different. Dan hit on that. Every person's different. Some kids are going to be like on it, like white on rice from the time they're 6 years old, and you just, they're just going to go. And then there's other guys, you got to let them grow and light their fire, expose them to as much positive things, as much mentors as possible. But one of the questions we got, guys, and we probably need to finish with this, with each of you thinking, is when you're seeking out a mentor, how do you go about that? So like, you're a baseball player, you're a student, you're a wrestler, and you're like seeking mentors in your life. The question, when I flipped over to it, I actually lost the screen because I'm on my cell phone, but it was something along the lines like, how do you find a mentor? How do you, you're a kid in high school and you don't know a lot of people, your family's a broken home. Do you have any advice for a young man or a young woman that's in that type of scenario? Dan?
Yeah, I do. I actually do. But, it's like we're talking only right now about young people growing up and having good mentors. And that's really important. And I think we did a good job on that. But I think what's another angle that I'll just touch on it. We won't really get a lot on it, but based on what I just heard from that question is like, go to a higher level, for an example. So say, for an example, I'm the coach at the University of Iowa, and it's in a high profile position, or you've developed it into a high profile position. And you got a squad of maybe 35 and and so on and so forth. And you got a lot of state champions on your team. And so you've done a good job with bringing them in. You got a good team. But, the coach at that level still needs people that he has to, or not has to, but that he would like to go to. And I call those mentors as well. And it could be as simple as a good newspaper guy that likes to write stories about your sport. I mean, I call him a mentor if I develop a great relationship with him. Okay, so that, that's just one point. Or the athletic director, or your assistant coaches, or, it's like this blows people's mind, but sometimes I'm having trouble with a kid. And you know what? I'm at the highest, pretty much at the highest level. I'm not at the Olympic level, but I coach there, and I've been there before and done that. But right now, we just went from youth to, say, college. So, and I'm having trouble with it. You know what? I'm going to seek some help again. I'm not just going to use my knowledge. There's somebody else that has knowledge about this kid, and that's his family. And so how many times does coaches actually, whether in high school or college or whatever level, that are kind of striking out a little bit, because this is baseball, but pick up the phone and just go for help and talk to parents. That doesn't mean you have to take it, but you certainly can listen. And if you can corroborate what you think with somebody else that's a good friend of his or his parents or whatever, then you're probably on a good road for getting what you want to get out of this kid. It's when you have these different conflicts, which I've had so many conflicts, and I don't, that's why the mentor thing never stops. The mentor thing never stops in your entire life. So when you get married, I know you got a wife, but if she ain't one of your best damn mentors, you're probably in trouble. And it's the same thing. So this mentor thing doesn't stop just with teachers, coaches, or just at one level. It goes forever. And to me, that's really critical. So when I'm in Iowa, now I needed a wrestling club. And that costs a lot of money. And so you can't go through your athletic department because they're not going to fund this. So you have good fans, and you have some good people and you develop relationships with that have the ability to help you because they've gotten hooked on your program. And that's why, you need fans. So you don't take anything for granted. And so this mentor thing, it goes and goes and goes. And, you know, you just can't get enough of it, because at every level, and then all of a sudden, if you only have one that funds you and he goes away, well, now you got to start over again. So, you know, it's important to have multiple type of mentors in them certain categories. And, you know, that's just a start for me. But I think if you really take the word and never let it go, I'm actually learning something from here. You know, I'm in a baseball. I'm not a baseball guy now. I mean, I was baseball young and I like baseball, and I'm actually I'm learning. I'm needing to learn about baseball. So I'm putting some kids through some baseball practices a little bit. And I'm asking the kids, and they're giving me good advice. And you know what? Probably makes them feel pretty good. So anyway, that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, so sport, there's a lot of crossover with, you know, how we hook kids, how we mentor kids, how we love on kids in the right kind of context, how we grow, how we develop skill sets. I mean, you know, coaching is teaching and teaching is coaching. So, you know, but it all starts, like Nate says, it starts with the heartbeat. It starts with, you know, the love. If you don't care, it doesn't matter how much you know. We all know that quote. So, Nate, we've been going for about an hour and 10 minutes. So I want to kind of turn it over to you to maybe pull this all together for those that are still with us, about the importance of mentorship and what you'd like to leave with the audience.
Thank you, Trent. Thank you, Dan. I like to say that you're not going to find a perfect mentor. There isn't any. So you're just going to keep looking, because like Dan said, the mentors in his life weren't perfect either. But you have to, like, and Trent was talking about strategically, really, I mean, this is something strategically you have to think about. You just don't throw your kid out in the street and say, figure it out, because let me just tell you something, he won't figure it out. It might be when he's 50. Okay, we don't have that kind of time. It's like, we want him to figure it out now. And so understand that you're not going to find any perfect mentor, but understand that you need to write down, what areas do you want to develop in the life of your child? What are the character qualities? Self-motivation, self-discipline, self-control, self-confidence, self-awareness, sacrifice. When you think of these different areas, those are the areas of the 6 tool. We call that self-mastery. If you think of those areas, well, how many people do you know that have all 6 of those? That's pretty hard to find. So you say, hey, you know, my grandpa's, man, he's such a disciplined man. So I'm going to have little Johnny spend time with grandpa on the weekend. They're going to go fishing. So maybe he learns how to be disciplined from grandpa. Then maybe he learns a little bit about self-sacrifice and components on, you know, giving, being a great giver. You learn that from grandma. You know, so you're surrounding yourself with winners, but nobody is going to give you everything. And like Dan said, mentors come and go. You first have to establish, what values do you want to instill in your child? What are the pillars for his life, for his success? And when you write those down, you say, this is what we're looking for right here. And this is also who I want to be. If I'm not that person already, I want to head better in that direction. I'm going to do a better job. So you have a vision. That's your navigation. Once you create your navigation, then you start strategically, and you also pray about it, and you let some of it happen organically, because it will. Like Dan said, no one lined up his 8th grade teacher. It just happened. It was meant to happen. So, but you have it, and you have a vision in your mind, and things start to happen and come together when you pray and you think and you have a plan. It's amazing how that works in life, and you'll see it start to come, but you have to have a vision. So right now you have a blank canvas. Paint the picture you want to see for your child, or for whoever it is in your life that you're trying to help mentor. Paint the picture, then help them to buy into that picture, saying, yeah, I can see that picture, Grandpa. I like that. And you get them to be a part of it. And it's a journey, and there is no perfection. John Wooden said, it's imperfection, perfection. It's imperfect perfection. And we're on this journey of imperfection, but we're striving for perfection. So understand the process is messy. I heard this one from a pastor. He said, success is messy. It's messy. Your journey is messy, but you're going to find success on the road. There's challenges the whole way. So don't get frustrated. Understand that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the law of adversity. Adversity's coming. It's coming. It's coming every day. Be ready for it. Be ready for challenges. You know, have some navigation. Write your bullet points, and then just let's go. Let's get after it. 6 Tool Nation. Here we go.
Yeah, fabulous stuff. I mean, here's like, while you guys were talking, I was just thinking of my mentors, and we've been coming at it a lot from young to old or old to young, but it's really can be, Dan hit on it earlier, it can be a peer. So my college baseball coach at UNC Wilmington got out of college coaching, ended up becoming the coach at Laney High School where Michael Jordan went. And I ended up becoming his assistant. And he was a huge mentor to me. So like when I think about mentorship, I think about shortening the learning curve a little bit and not having to figure it all out yourself.
Right.
When somebody loves you and you're hungry to be who they are or in their position or, learn from them, you're going to pick up on things like you just said. You don't have to figure it all out yourself, and it shortens the learning curve. So they're investing, they see a quality in you. My former coach saw a quality in me where he felt like I could be a good baseball coach. But I had to realize that I didn't know it all. And I could learn so much by just watching him, watching how he dealt with parents, watching how he made lineups, watching how he devised practices, watching how he dealt with adversity and, all of the different scenarios that happen when you're coaching. So that's just one small example, so when you're seeking a mentor, I think you need to seek out the qualities, as Nate said, you seek out the qualities that that you most relate to. Who do you want to be? What do you want to become? And if you show somebody, I would argue that there's a lot of people out there that are willing to give their time and energy to help strangers. If you just show a true passion and excitement for what it is you want to become. If somebody comes to me, just like we're doing right now, I mean, we're not getting paid to do this. We don't know it all. Okay. Dan has, listen, the guy's like amazing. Okay. And we're getting to hear experiences from him and pick up on things that work for him. And, that should help us. That should help the listener if we can truly apply. But you got to figure out what you want to apply and what you don't want to apply and what works. Every scenario is a little bit different, but this is what knowledge is all about. You seek knowledge, you seek wisdom, and then you become better. You improve as a human being, you improve as a coach, you improve as a parent. Okay. And so that's what I love about this podcast. Is we were able to pick the brains of two master teachers, Dan Gable, Nate Trosky, and how you guys work with your grandchildren, things that you learn from mentors. And so I would encourage the audience, as we're going to close right here, is to be a mentor. Okay. Take people under your wing or find somebody that can mentor you. If you're a youth coach and you want to be a better coach, get on board. Call Dan, call me, call Nate. I spoke to 2 youth teams, no feather in my cap, but I spoke to 2 13-year-old teams this week, for an hour and 10 to an hour and 30 minutes apiece, just answering questions. Again, not that I know it all, but if I could help, they're gathering wisdom. It's an honor for people to ask your opinion and value what you have to say. So you guys are absolutely awesome. Thank you for your time, Dan. We just touched the tip of the iceberg. I know. We really need like 4 hours to go through something like this, but maybe next week or here shortly, Nate, we can have Dan back on if he's willing to do it, and we can go on to a different topic because I do want to hear about this wrestling on the pavement thing. I'm really, really excited to find out the details of that, and just hope all the listeners pick something up, and we'll get together next Tuesday, Trosky Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern next week. You guys good?
Thank you, Dan. Thank you,
Dan.
Yep.
Nate. All right. You guys have a great evening. Good night.